Hello, I'm Max Bagushev and you're watching the news from Kazakhstan. The questioning of all 37 defendants in the case of Zhanaozen violence has been completed. More episodes of horrific torture practices used during the pre-trial investigation were revealed on Thursday.
For 3 days we were there, we had nothing to eat and we were beaten with batons if we asked for food. When I was listening to the defendants' testimonies, I couldn't hold back my tears. My heart was breaking. The things they were doing to our guys, what sort of perverts are these people? How can a man place it up someone's backside, raping our guys, beating them? Being in that courtroom, I can tell you that there is no faith in any justice. Torture for investigation purposes was reported by defendants, including 2 minors. Nursultan Mukashov went to the town square on the fateful day because he was told to do so at school. According to the defendant, when the rioting started, the teacher ran away, abandoning his pupils. Nursultan also ran home once he heard the shooting. In 3-4 days, the prosecution team came to pick him up. They assured his mother that nothing would happen with the boy. But according to Nursultan, prosecution investigator named Maksat beat him up in order to get a confession.
Prosecution witnesses were also questioned on Thursday. First to speak was Vitaly Klimenko, the deputy head of the anti-drug department at the Mangistau Regional DIA. Klimenko said his team was sent to Zhanaozen on December 15 to conduct an investigation, and on the day of the riots detained 3 men who carried out boxes from a stall without drafting a protocol. If there were any doubts as to whether defendants were subjected to violence, they were dispelled by the heard testimonies, especially by my client Melis Sarbayev, who couldn't even hold his tears. He is still getting over the brutality he experienced during the preliminary investigation. He identified internal affairs officers who detained him as the ones who tortured him. The second witness was Daniel Radilov, a principal officer for organized crime control in Mangistau region, also sent to Zhanaozen before the mass disorders. Melis Sarbayev identified him as the one who put a plastic bag over his head and took him away. Defendants Abdrakhmanov and Aminov also identified Adilov as the one who threatened their lives, hit them in the kidneys and injured the head of one of the defendants with a pistol. The hearing ended with a scandal. Lawyer Sansizbayev wanted to talk to his defendants, but according to witness, a police officer prevented him from talking and hit him in the face. When we were getting out of the courthouse, some people were still inside and they heard and saw Sansizbayev trying to talk to his defendants, but a police officer came to him, grabbed him by his shoulder and hit him in the face. Then other officers rushed at him. If such a thing happened in the courtroom in the presence of lawyers, what might happen to our children then? The ban on all audio and video recordings is still in place for the trial of Shetpe disorders. The motion to allow recordings during the first day of hearings was satisfied only partially.
The presiding judge Mirzabekov, after reviewing the issue, ruled to allow reporters to use audio and video recordings, but only at the trial's beginning and only for 10 minutes. Obviously, this permit was valid only during the first day of the trial, and then reporters had to follow the hearings from a separate room, which is still prohibited to record the proceedings. The quality of the video feed from the courtroom leaves much to be desired too, with frequent cuts in sound and image. It is noteworthy that trials over Zhanaozen and Shetpe are covered only by 3 media outlets: Azatik Radio, Stan KZ and Golos Respubliki newspaper. It seems that tortures are becoming a norm for the investigation. At the second headline-making trial in Aksau over mass riots at Shetpe station, the defendants informed about beatings and sophisticated methods of torture by police. On Thursday, 3 of 12 defendants retracted their previous testimonies due to the pressure exerted during the investigation. Their testimonies do not reflect reality, as police officers were literally punched the needed answers out of the people. For instance, defendant Asan Adiev has damaged his eardrum and now cannot hear well. He says that he had nothing to do with the oil workers when he was detained on December 18th at 6:30 a.m. on his way to work. Adiev already testified to the court that he was beaten, quote, as soon as he was detained, so he fainted and for the whole week remained in critical condition. He named 2 policemen who were beating him and who were also present in the courtroom. We have an excerpt of Adiev's interrogation conducted by the state prosecutor Zhanaev.
Hassan, this question is for you. You said you didn't touch others. Were you subjected to anything illegal like beating, threats, or acts of other nature while you were kept in the pre-trial detention facility?
Yes, I was.
I'm asking about the detention center and the pre-trial detention facility.
Yes, that happened.
In which of them?
In both.
How long it lasted?
All the time.
When did you get there?
December 21st.
Did the pressuring continue after that?
It did.
For how long?
2 months entirely since I arrived.
So, by whom were you pressured?
By Aktau investigative officers.
The case materials include your indictment dated February 10, which has your sincere acknowledgement of no pressure taking place. You personally wrote that they were Kazhmurat and the second guy. How should we understand it?
They forced me to write it down like that. I had to do it because they threatened to stick a baton in my anus otherwise.
You wrote the indictment twice addressed to the head of the investigation ward. How can you explain this?
Both times they were threatening the same way, beat me up and forced me to sign that.
Was it written by you or police officers?
Can you repeat it louder?
Was it written by you or police officers?
I didn't do it myself, I wrote under pressure.
So you wrote it?
I did, but under their pressure.
The bill on the prevention of torture was presented on Thursday in the country's parliament. The document provides for the creation of a public commission with an access to detention facilities. The bill caused quite a debate, and public figures used the opportunity to recall the source of the problem on hand, the inadequate social protection of law enforcement. Supposedly, this issue forces them to engage exclusively in knocking out testimonies. Interestingly, the MPs who previously ratified the Anti-Torture Convention were not even surprised about the widespread of torture practices in the country.
Torture and abuse are most common during interrogation and investigation. In my opinion, that comes from the lack of professionalism. Nekharoshev warns against expecting police officers to become well-educated and humane and stop employing tortures. The ex-MP believes that the first step should be a law on social protection of law enforcement officers. Jamis Tusmagambetova also doubts the bill efficiency. She notes that according to the official's plan, the commission will be formed only by NGOs tied into a contract with the Ministry of Justice, in other words, pro-government organizations. Besides, the government authorities have again limited the number of inspection visits by the commission. Thus, there is no way the situation in prisons could be controlled efficiently. The principle of unexpected visits to prevent brutality and law infringements is thus violated. So basically there is nothing to discuss. This is going to be another spit and polish act demonstrating the so-called national preventive mechanism in Kazakhstan.
Families of 42 men recently convicted for terrorist attacks in Atyrau question the verdict and say their loved ones are completely innocent. The trial was conducted behind closed doors, which made people gather outside by the front entrance to wait for the news. As the prosecutor Galimjan Kulmanov said during the post-conviction briefing, all defendants pleaded guilty. They are also charged with illicit manufacturing and possession of explosives, assaulting government agency officers and terrorism propaganda. The convicts have been sentenced to different terms of imprisonment varying from 5 to 15 years. According to the mother of one of the convicts, nobody expected the punishment to be this severe. We are a good, cultured family. I don't know what happened. The NSC officials promised to help us. 10 years in a maximum security prison is something we were not prepared for. The investigator had a good opinion about our boy. He was helping during the examination process and telling us not to worry. We are appalled by the sentence. All the guys are innocent. They were sentenced to 10 years of prison. Will I live long enough to see my son back home? I am disabled myself and my son has a child. How will I feed them? What's their fault? If they indeed organized blast, the situation would be understandable. But we were promised that our children would not be convicted. 10 years, just think about it. Why don't they fear God? This sentence is unusual even for murderers. Where is the city administration? Where are the Muslim community heads? They are just sitting there and invocating people to the path of God. And now what's happening to those following the path of God? This is not the first terrorism conviction delivered this month. In the beginning of April, the Inter-District Criminal Court of Jambul region attained a verdict for 5 alleged terrorist group members. According to the investigation evidence, Pakhat Janjaparov led the group and was sentenced to a life term. The rest of the sentence varied from 2 to 25 years in a maximum security prison. Just like in Atyrau, the trial was held behind the closed doors. To recap, on November 12th last year, 7 people, including 5 policemen, died in Taraz as a result of attack by an alleged jihad follower. Is there really a threat of terrorism in Kazakhstan, and why the public doesn't have full information about the situation? The next report looks into the legitimacy of actions of the law enforcement agencies as well as their secrets.
Minimum information and maximum fear. The verdict in the case over the last year's terrorist attacks near the Atyrau NSC department and the city prosecutor general's office has been delivered. The headline-making trial was conducted in total isolation. Even the families of defendants were not allowed to attend. The publicity revealed information was confident to the number of convicts and the sentence terms. Both the real blast and the news about prevented terrorist attacks have been shattering the event tenor of Kazakhstan citizens' lives for a year. However, investigation evidence and testimonies of those involved in the case are held confidential. What would happen if somebody being discontented started telling the truth supported with facts in front of even a couple of journalists and observers? I believe this would result in an international scandal. It could emerge, let's say, that the special service or other pro-government agencies were involved in organizing the blast. The possibilities are many, and closed trials are intended to prevent them from leaking out. Utigen Iksanov is concerned that his former colleagues prefer to consider the cases of public importance in closed deliberation proceedings. The Supreme Court Justice with 30 years experience explains that the Article 29 of the Criminal Procedure Code provides for this right for the judge. However, the publicity limitations may only apply to a few cases, such as securing privacy of intimacies, state secrets, and protecting the persons involved in the case. As long as there is no evidence of state secrets or other legally provided conditions, the conviction can be overturned by the superior authority due to violation of the trial keystone, which is a publicity of judicial examination. The MP Yekaterina Nikitinskaya learned of the completion of the terrorism court case in Atyrau through journalists. She avoided going into disquisitions as to why extremism cases are conducted behind closed doors in Kazakhstan, since pressing the judge is definitely not good, even after the judgment has been delivered. She suggested seeking further clarification in the corresponding bodies. We decline to comment on the matter even as a parliamentary fraction. The trials have started and the MPs, as well as any other citizens, cannot press or otherwise influence the court. The second trial has just finished, that's right, and people have been convicted for lengthy terms of imprisonment. But if we find out about violations of any kind, we will definitely respond to that. This year, $90 million have been allocated for anti-terrorism and anti-extremism efforts. In addition, a special agency was established in support of the initiative. 52 people have been arrested on charges of terrorism in Kazakhstan during the past 4 months. An average term of imprisonment equals to 10 years in a maximum security prison. However, the government still has not given a chance to citizens to estimate efficiency of the measures.
Nurtai Abakayev, the head of the National Security Committee in charge of combating terrorism in the country, is reluctant to comment similar incidents. We have one of rare statements on the matter dated back to 2010.
Terrorism in all its forms remains a serious challenge to the system of domestic and international security, as it has grown beyond borders and turned into a massive global threat. The problems and the number of issues related to terrorism are also growing.
On Thursday, newspaper Respublika, citing a source within the president's administration, revealed Nurtai Abakayev, the head of the National Security Committee, is about to resign from his post. Supposedly, the official has already submitted his petition to the president.
According to the publication after the resignation of Abakayev from National Security Committee, where he filled the position of the chair, there will be personnel changes in the high-level administration. According to one of the scenarios, Abakayev can become the head of the president's administration. It is rumored that Aslan Musin will be appointed as head of Atyrau city administration, while Prime Minister Masimov will be sent to Moscow to head supranational body of the Eurasian Economic Union, or becomes an ambassador to China. His position might be filled by the Vice Prime Minister Serik Akhmetov or his predecessor Umirzak Shukeyev. According to the second scenario, Masimov and Musin will keep their positions or perhaps switch them, while Abukayev will be appointed as the ambassador to Russia. According to other scenarios, the position of the administration head will be filled by Ahmedjan Yesimov, the current Almaty mayor. Musin will be appointed as the mayor of Astana, and the current head of the capital, Imangaliy Tasmagambetov, can even become the president. According to Respublika sources, during a recent talk in the president's palace, Nazarbayev said that Abukayev, Shukeyev and Kasim-Jomart Tokayev are his likeliest successors. No matter what scenario plays out, current cabinet head Masimov will be left out, while Musin, the head of the administration, will find himself ahead of the game in view of his appointment as the head of the Supreme Law Enforcement Personnel Review Board under the President of Kazakhstan, and a recent order of Nazarbayev to give him more power. In particular, now he can give orders to vice prime ministers, which was previously reserved exclusively for Nazarbayev and Masimov.
Nurtai Abukayev headlines the list of the most influential politicians in Kazakhstan. The survey was conducted by the Social and Political Research Center Strategy. Imangaliy Tasmagambetov is ranked second, followed by Karim Masimov and Aslan Musin. President Nazarbayev was not included in the research.
At one time or another, Nurtai Abukayev have already held positions that are being predicted for him. He already headed Nazarbayev's administration and worked as an ambassador in Moscow. This is the second time Major General Abukayev became the head of the National Security Committee. The NSC denies rumors that Abukayev is leaving his post.
On Thursday, experts of Political Decisions Institute discussed changes expected in the country in 2020. All specialists, except for Murat Shibutov, a representative of the Border Cooperation Association, said they don't expect any major corrections. Murat Shibutov, projecting for year 2020, pointed out increased separatism and degradation of the population. In his opinion, Kazakhstan is incapable of supporting a high level of education and culture. According to the expert, the capital of Kazakhstan will be moved back to Almaty in view of the fact that budget of Astana is much greater than the south of Kazakhstan region, which is more densely populated. Shibutov says the large investments into Astana are not justified. I don't think our economy will be able to support Astana and the capital will be moved back. I'm also confident that UNDP projection is correct and we are going to face a decrease in the population growth by 17 to 18 million. Peter Svoik, the chairman of the Public Antitrust Commission in Almaty, believes that the oil age in the country will last and demand for natural resources and metals will be stable. According to the expert, the only change to be expected in Kazakhstan is a decreased income rent for raw materials. I think there won't be any changes. We are likely to have more of the same in 10 years, as the oil age will last for another couple of decades. As for ferrous and not ferrous metals, there won't be any change at all. The only economic change that we are likely to experience is decreased raw material and stock rent profit in commodity prices. The list of strategic deposits have been updated and published in Kazakhstan. In total, there are 361 sites of national importance, including the major ones at Tengiz, Karachaganak and Kashagan. The news, however, was immediately overshadowed by the information that the US might gain control of over 75% of the entire oil production in the country.
Dmitry got behind the wheel right after finishing school. Dmitry's job as a private taxi driver supports Dmitry and his entire family for 15 years now. The major expense is gasoline, as its price keeps growing by the day. The driver wonders why the fuel price is rising in this oil-rich region. This is an oil-rich country, yet gas is expensive and there are fuel shortages. This happens because no one knows who controls the industry. Murat Shibutov, a political analyst, explains who exactly will control the industry in his article published by news agency Regnum. According to Shibutov, in 8 years' time, USA will be in control of over 75% of all oil production in Kazakhstan. This news has immediately been republished by various websites, including Russian. This map shows the major strategic oil fields of Kazakhstan. According to Murat Shibutov, the three major oil production targets with a total reserve of about 6 trillion tons, Kashagan, Tengiz and Karachaganak, are financed by the US companies. Although these fields do not represent most of the oil production at the moment, in 8 years, the situation will entirely change. By 2020, the output will reach about 160 million tons of oil per year, 20 million tons from Tengiz, around 90 million from Kashagan, and roughly 10 million from Karachaganak, thus 120 120 million tons in total. By simple calculation, one can conclude that 120 million tons, i.e. over 70% of oil, will be produced by US-controlled oil fields. Oleg Yegorov, professor of economics, states that these assumptions are rushed. He explains to his students that Kazakhstan's authorities are actively seeking to return their assets. The authorities are pursuing new economics policy during the last 4 to 5 years. They pay large amounts of money. Basically, we're paying billions in order to be part of the Kashagan offshore project. After getting 10% of the Karachaganak, we have matching shares of Mangistau and 50% of Munaygas, with another 50% belonging to the Chinese. Perhaps this is not a bad initiative, says economic Mukhtar Tayjan. He says it is like lemon tea, sweet but sour. Kazakhstan is buying out assets through credits, which still implies dependency, just a slightly different one. But the main point stands. Foreign companies control oil production for already a long time. They work under production sharing agreements. No one knows what is stated in these agreements, as they are confidential. The people are unaware of the very core of the conditions of oil export by these companies. Under these agreements, all of the legislation enactments of Kazakhstan have no power over these companies. They operate under a special type of taxation. No one knows what that type is. Unfortunately, our subsoil is being used not for us, not for the people. It is being used by foreigners or our oligarchs. While experts argue which direction the oil dollar will flow in the nearest future, Dmitry, the driver, is worried about the immediate present. Generally, I don't care who's in control, what is the government doing there. My work depends on gas. How am I going to work in the future? I must provide for my family.
The staff of the ore enrichment factory belonging to Kazakhmys are eagerly waiting to receive their recently raised wages. While fighting for their earned raise, employees were even planning a strike, but the board chair of the corporation met with them at the 11th hour and personally promised to settle the issue.
The workers of the Zhezkazgan ore enriching factory are anxious about the fate of their salaries. Even though they realize it has been raised, they still want to be able to receive it. Muratbek Sizdikov is one of the initiative group members who raised the issue of increasing the salaries, though the workers doesn't really link the positive outcome of their initiative with the Kazakhmys development strategy.
Я вообще хотел бы сказать, поблагодарить, вернее, общественность Казахстана.
I would actually like to thank Kazakhstan Society, the youth newspaper and the K+. Media had greatly helped us to pursue our endeavors. Without it all, we'd be quickly silenced. The battle for the salary rise was quite serious. 3 months ago, the workers have appealed to the CEO, Eduard Tagay, however, received no response. Then the staff formed an initiative group and addressed the issue directly to the President Nazarbayev, which also was left unresponded. The employees' last argument was a rally scheduled for March 22nd. Of note, workers' salaries at this point were quite modest. As a belt woman, I'm entitled to one of the highest salaries here, which is about $340. We don't have higher rates than that. The tension kept growing as workers claimed the employers was pressuring them. When the tension reached its peak, all of a sudden, Eduard Tagay decided to join the talks. He came to Zhezkazgan personally to calm discontented workers down. He also explained about the new payment system, saying this is not a forced measure, but rather a part of the company's development strategy. The salary raises is just a part of the new payment system, which hasn't appeared out of the blue. Its implementation plan had been in development for 1.5 years. Kazakhmys management explains that the restructuring program is aimed at raising the management and production efficiency. The new system implies rewarding each employee in accordance with their proficiency level. The differentiated approach will allow for motivating the workers to raise their qualifications to higher levels in order to apply for corresponding high pay. It is also an incentive for the company to train its employees, but now the new tensions at workplaces are emerging as the staff of the local heating plant are using the same strategy. The employees have already created an initiative group and drafting appeals. The average salary starts from about $170 for regular workers. As a head of the shift, I receive about $320. I don't think this suits the market rates in Kazakhstan today.
Я считаю, что это не соответствует реальной зарплате, которая сейчас в данный момент по Казахстану.
Now the employees wonder whether the unclear situation over the salary payment suspension is also a part of the company's leaders' strategic plan. For many, it feels like a déjà vu, as the history is repeating itself again.
Well-known Kazakhstan's violence player Marat Bisangaliyev will take part in several charity events in the country. On Thursday, Ayala Foundation and the local representation of the Russian Savings Bank announced Bisangaliyev's concert with all earned money to be spent on the purchase of intensive care equipment for the Kızılar'da Perinatal Center. Due to severe environmental conditions in the Aral Sea area, the health of local population, especially the reproductive age of women, is under threat. It explains the fact that child mortality rate exceeds the average level nationwide. The situation is especially grim in the rural areas. Marat Bisangaliyev is going to perform in the Mega National Entertainment Center. The maestro will play the violin dressed as a street musician. The raised money will go to support a child suffering from a brain cancer. The musician will play pieces composed by Almas Erkebaev. I performed at the Carnegie Hall in New York at the time when the tsunami hit. All the money made there I donated to the Red Crescent Society. And of course, I couldn't resist the invitation to do the charity performance in my homeland. Such events will promote the arts patronage in Kazakhstan. This is all we have time for today. Join us for more tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.